The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall continue to follow me all the delusory days of this protracted experience of death. And I will dwell in the house of the most super intelligent power, source, and force of love and creation forever. Respect, peace and respect, Benton and chat, indeed. Shout out to Joe Moore. Benton here. What's happening? Rolling out of the rest area. That's what's happening. Headed to the west side of Kansas City. In fact, let's go ahead and turn on the hotspot. Yeah. GPS navigation going. One moment. Four hours, 40 minutes, 288 miles. Has a trap been laid between Benton and the company? I almost had a panic attack this morning thinking about that. I'll get into the details on that. I guess we can do that first. I've got a few topics. Nick Reiner, of course, gives me opportunity to cover topics related to sociology and psychology, mind control, drugs, violence, criminal justice. There's a lot of meat on that bone, sir. Society, I guess sociology, fair enough. Yeah, the panic attack, part of getting proper rest, that I uncharacteristically rested past my 10-hour break, but hang on, the whole rig seems like it's leaning. Is that the wind? Strong ass wind out here. Wow. Slow down. What is going on? Where are we going? West. So wind out of the south? Does that make any sense? I don't fucking know. I don't know how that works. Waking up and going back to sleep. At a certain point, and I've talked about before, my brain runs this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week analysis. And that also continues during sleep. And had some thoughts of, well, I could perhaps squeeze in a 34-hour restart to restart my 70-hour clock. Bear with me, I'm quite thirsty this morning. Get the water here. So my brain, doing some of those calculations, pretty quickly we get into notions of, at a certain point, I may be talking to the owner of the company or the dispatcher who will fail to manage properly, and things will fall by the wayside, which is the normal course of business. And then also you have cranky ass truckers who don't necessarily want to be told things. And so that creates a pattern. My deal is, if they need me to take a 34-hour restart in order to do whatever they planned for me beyond the load that I'm on, that's fine with me. However, I cannot read the minds of these people. And if they know, roughly speaking, what I'm supposed to be doing over the holidays, for example, well, they haven't told me. To maintain their own flexibility, I'm sure. And then you get into driver retention. What causes drivers to quit? What causes them to stay? Well, part of that would be maybe telling them, here's what we're going to do after this load. And then, simple-minded folks, if that falls through or doesn't happen, then it's like, well, you told me this, you told me that. Those dynamics. Well, Benton doesn't really give a fuck. However, what Benton gives a fuck about is, I don't want to be told later, well, you should have taken a 34-hour restart. It's common sense. Because all I hear is, hey, we think you're stupid. Because to tell you to take a 34-hour restart, in their mind, I think would be them telling me they think I'm stupid. Except, of course, they have their own agenda for not telling me this. Meanwhile, for all I know, I'm not expected to take a 34-hour restart. So, and this is the gaslighting of the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, world of dev, game of lies. It's built right in, to never be quite certain, right? To never be able to, quote, rest assured fully. And then, anything that goes wrong or any problems that I address, it's either dismissed out of hand, it's treated like it's more or less the ravings of a silly person. This wind is fucking crazy, man. I'm all over the road here. This is nuts. And, and I understand the psychological dynamics of why people do these things. And especially when you start to get into manipulative type of personalities. Then you get into people who are fairly skilled at manipulation. And then you have other people who are able to recognize patterns and then begin to counteract and thwart some of the manipulation also, such as myself. And you want to talk about psychological torture. This is the psychological torture that's built into the experience, the pseudo experience, right? Because waking dreams, surrealistic unreality must, deja vu all over again, must be reconciled for. Always. And so hence, nearly had a panic attack and then realized, well, how about you're about to pray in a few minutes and that'll probably sort you out. Help remind you of exactly what's going on here, buddy. And again, when I first awakened, that's one of the most vulnerable times. And then this is born out of not a desire to do a good job necessarily. It's born out of based on being sacrificed to Moloch's machine of industrial and post-industrial society and coached up and socialized from day one to, pull myself up by my bootstraps, hard work as identity, do the best job, and, you know, uh, fears around job loss or whatever. As silly as that may be, this is all of these mechanisms are actually built into the psyche, and the psyche or the psychology designed by the system, for the system, in service of the system. And so in some ways, the individual, if we look at the title of the stream, the government does what power and money forces it to do. It also means it doesn't do anything that, except its own best interest. And government representing systems and system, well, of course, that becomes a living, breathing thing on some level. Well, not really, but animated death warmed over, it becomes a zombie-like thing, sort of lumbering and lurching forward. And it will do what based on the mathematics of John Nash and game theory optimal, it will do what seems to be in its best interest at a mathematically correct pace to sustain, perpetuate, and grow itself. Because whatever's not growing and changing and evolving and expanding is dying, contracting, and floating. And to make an enemy of what I am, this system of things and its various systems must also grow and expand, right? In an inverse fashion. And maybe that is implosion. What's up, folk country? Maybe that is implosion from a perspective. All right, where's the caffeine? Where's the caffeine? There it is. Caffeine addiction has not been so bad this time around, I must say. In truck driving. So this morning, I've got about 5 hours to drive. And maybe I can unload early. So I'm effectively a day early, but not because I did some fantastic job. It is winter time. It is the holidays. Maybe some of the scheduling, they extended a little bit. And at least for now, they've stopped giving me all this just in time, hurry, hurry, hurry. If everything goes perfect, then maybe it won't be too late of a delivery. Maybe the broker won't get too angry and try to find carrier and all this, dock some of their pay. Again, the adversarial elements of the experience, the transacting. Wait a minute, I'm taking the wrong exit here. It says Kansas City. Oh well. Yeah, 270. Okay, this is what's going on. Yeah. Just a moment. A little bit more traffic than anticipated. I think a lot of this is truckers doing whatever they need to do because most of them are going to take off the holiday. So this is actually quite a bit of truck traffic out here. And it's not super early. It's 5 o'clock. Give me just a moment to navigate through this morass. past about 30 trucks. See if we can find a groove here. All right, see how this works for us. So on the one hand, you have the initiative of what would be seen potentially as a benefit to the company of restarting the 70-hour clock, except if they already know, generally speaking, what I'll be doing and I don't need to reset my 70-hour clock, then all sorts of things could happen down the road to where they'll be like, well, yeah, if you hadn't taken that 34, then, you know, you wouldn't have got stuck in that snowstorm and just whatever, you know, whatever could happen, right? Or there wouldn't have been these delays, or this wouldn't have happened, or that wouldn't have happened. Versus, you know, I prefer to just get up in the morning and drive anyway. If I'm loaded and I'm, you know, able to hit the road, even if it's only for 300 miles, that's my preference. You know, might as well suit myself. Because there's really no way for me to know. And then I think common sense, and this is why there's no such thing as common sense, is, well, why don't you ask them? Well, because it's 3 in the morning, or because it was 3 in the morning. That's why. They can say, oh, we're 24 hours until they're blue in the face. No, they're not. The big company's 24 hours because they have the staff to work 3 different shifts. And these people have to compete with the big boys. Now, the owner seems to be 24 hours, but if you think I'm calling him and all he's going to say is, I don't even know what you're doing, man. So I guess give me a minute to boot up my computer. Like, we're not doing that. You know, that'd be crazy. More gaslighting. More gaslighting. Oh, and then, you know, give us a call anytime. It's like, well, I don't know, man. I slept in this morning and it was 3 a.m. when I got up. So, I'll tell you there. That was me sleeping in. That's still nighttime to y'all. Not you, the listener, company. And why is there no way to convey all this? Just can't be conveyed. I can say all of these things until I'm blue in the face, and it doesn't have an effect. And this is where the autistic person, the undiagnosed fake autist, right, neurodivergent, it took me a long ass time to finally fully accept, you know, yeah, I like to give explanations and I feel better, but the reality is it simply serves no purpose other than to perhaps further frustrate myself and everybody else, because humanity individually, by and large, is simply incapable of taking in these messages. All they can do is remember the pain of when they pissed off some trucker that they're trying to dispatch, and he's got 25 years of experience and he's good at his job, and he got fed up and went to work for somebody else, which is the only reason he's working for this company, because he got fed up and went to work for somebody else, right? Because he's been working as a trucker for 25 years. Benton works as a trucker till he gets fed up with trucking, and or there's so much money in his pocket, he says, well, I might as well quit my job and go do something else with my time. I don't leave one. I've never one time left one company and went directly to another company. You know, and not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that's not what I do. So that's what I told. That's part of how I convinced this guy to hire me. It was like, look, if I like the job, why would I quit? Like, I don't go job to job. I work, and then at a certain point, I've got a pocket full of money, and then it's, you know, all truckers are disgruntled to some extent, and I quit. And then I take up to a year off, at least in one case, and then I come back. So it's like, yeah, why? If I like the job, why would I quit? A lot of people on my last job would have stayed 2 weeks. I stayed 2 months because I hated the guy that I hated working with the guy that hired me, but I was still going to stay long enough to get the pocket full of money. Well, we're past the pocket full of money stage. I got the pocket full of money right now, from my perspective. You know. But again, remember, we're not in a world where people start working with a trucking company and then 2 months later they got 8 G's in their pocket. We don't live in that world. We live in the world where people have bills, they're chasing their tails, they're trying not to get their house repoed, they're trying not to get evicted from their apartments, they're trying not to get them and their old lady's vehicles repossessed. Right? Like, no, I got 8 G's. Not that that's a lot of money, but it's not nothing. When I know if I'm willing to go to something of an undesirable area, I can go stay in a motel for $700 a month. Even a more desirable area for however much a week. Apartments between 1,000 and like 2,400. So, you know, $350 a week ain't really a big deal. Think about it. That's just what it costs. You want to be indoors for any period of time. Or go to bumfuck, some bumfuck area of Arkansas and get it for half price. Either way. Yeah, the holidays. People get all fucking bent out of shape for the holidays. It's one of the most stressful times of the year, certainly historically. I'm already seeing some wacky behavior this morning. About a week out from Christmas. But I went ahead and looked at my hours, my recap hours. I have enough hours to get done whatever in the world they've scheduled me to do. Whatever's beyond that, well, nobody told me. So hard to plan for things I'm unaware of. Right. And remember, none of all this is all only happening with Benton, the performer, in the context of the performance, because he was born into a time warp in Southeast Arkansas where there was no way to. And thankfully, I certainly wouldn't have wanted to be diagnosed with anything. I'm certainly not handicapped. And the world I was born into and socialized within, yes, it is this world, but at that time, for whatever reason, it was way more accepting of oddballs. Wow, this road is fun. Goodness. And, in some ways, I guess probably because of my family name and our prominence in the community, the teachers in the school would have had to sort of accommodate me anyway, right? And, certainly accommodated, not all, but most of the students, it seemed. But, on some level, my whole life has been, again, the context being a protracted experience of death. That's been an actual short bus retarded person, just, coerced, compelled, forced in a way, and also incentivized to engage in normal human activity and normal human socializing, right? School, college, employment, versus getting a diagnosis and just getting put on whatever meds and just, going on whatever government programs were available or whatever money my parents would have wanted to spend, maybe a special school or whatever. And I think I prefer to run the gauntlet that everybody else runs because, even without these, challenges, everybody has their own specific challenge, obviously. But in my opinion, I do pretty fucking good overall. So I'm simply no longer, in my younger days, I was willing to internalize a lot of these notions around, I'm trying really hard and it's not quite working out in the long run. Right? At a certain point, I was 40 or 45 and I said, look, if I was going to make something of myself in the eyes of this world, don't you think it would have happened by now? Because there is sort of this forever young quality to Gen X where it's like at a certain point I'm talking to Mr. Miyagi or just some random bozo and I do sort of have this youthful kind of countenance about me. I'm pretty sure it's just at a certain point I can detect that, it's almost like I'm being treated like I'm a kid on some level. Like, oh, well, you can always just start over and go be when people talk about the trades, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to be a fucking plumber's apprentice. Like that's what a 20-year-old does, which I'm not above that. My point is I'm 40 fucking 5 now. Like, what are you talking about? This is not a thing. And I think, psychologically people trick themselves and it sort of becomes a thing. It's a fantasy, even though we don't see examples of it. And it's also sort of this, hope floats. There's always hope, never surrender, scratch, claw, bootstrap. It's like, yo, man, I put enough effort in over enough time, If raw intelligence in certain arenas, if certain advantages, like obviously it's not a meritocracy and obviously these things don't carry the day. It's, who can leverage what they have to leverage and do that while also playing the game of lies within the world of death. See, that's the trick. How adroitly can one play the game of lies? Well, that's not generally speaking a strong suit of your typical, not that there's a such thing as typical autistic person, but that's generally not something associated with autism. Is well versed in winning in a world of death and a game of lies, right? Politically, and knowing sort of what machinations to involve oneself in behind the scenes. And I've always had the attitude of, if that's what's required, I'm not interested anyway. Yeah, I've read the 48 laws of power. It's like, am I capable of, devoting much of my energies and to doing that sort of thing? Sure, I would rather not be here. Like it's not. There's no. I see no attract. I'm just not attracted to that. And some would say, well, what do you mean? What does that have to do with anything? We're talking about material success. It's like, exactly. We're talking about in the context of being sacrificed to Moloch's machine. Will the being go ahead and craft that graven image to uphold before Moloch by doing whatever is necessary to be a quote success? And remember, we only measure in money. It's like the answer is no. I've never been willing to devote myself to that at the level of commitment. Absolutely not. No, thank you. I'm starting to wish I had left a little earlier. This is some 8 out of 10 bozo level driving here. This is comical. Yeah. Well, they've convinced me. I'm going 55, and if they don't like it, fuck them. This is another thing. If I had tried to do this 34-hour restart, I would have had to do this 5 hours of driving. I would have had to drive the wheels off the whole time. Whereas today I could lollygag. I made one lane change and 10 different cars immediately pounced on me and punished me, but they were all happy to hang back lollygagging. The moment I changed the lane, oh my God, now they think there's a big truck in our way. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Like, well, if y'all are hurrying, how were there 15 cars behind me? I don't understand. How is this possible? Well, because this is not a real world, because it can't be a real world. This world is a lack of what would be necessary to be real. It can't be real. It's not possible. So that was waking dreams, surrealistic unreality right there. That's what that is, showing itself. But here I am. And there's just no reason. There's no reason for what's happening. It's just, it's quite hilarious. Anyway, and nobody wants to live in a truck, not take home time, and haul fucking freight perpetually. Except I do. Now, I'd prefer not to haul the freight, and I would prefer not to haul the freight in the way that most of the other drivers haul the freight, which is to maximize their own hours, because they got to make maximum money and they got to rush home to mommy. It's like, yeah, I don't care about any of that. How about we just keep me working 7 days a week, and every once I notice one of these deliveries is at 10 p.m. It's like, yeah, every once in a while I'll happily work outside of my normal sleep schedule, but more often than not, I need to be asleep by about 8 p.m. That's just what it is. And they're either going to meet that standard or I'm going to quit. I'm not going to threaten to quit. I'm going to quit. Because they think they can shame me or browbeat me or humiliate me. They got another thing coming. It's just, no effect. Has no effect. Other than to make me, brings out the aggression in me, right? I'm a little cranky old man this morning. I can feel it. I got to stop sleeping at rest areas. And I thought about that when I stopped last night, because I was going to go about another 20 miles and park at a truck stop. And this is 3 times in a row where the energetically is just something's off about it. And we don't need to get into the details of the chat. I mean, you can, I guess, but it's really not important to discuss the whys, but it is what it is. I don't need to be sleeping at rest areas. My nerves is shot, but then some of that's probably the healing anyway. I am on some powerful ass herbs, lest we forget, for my intestines. It's actually probably part of the process, but I don't think I would feel quite this strange if I had slept at the truck stop. And it's fairly obvious to me that the system, the truck driving industry, economies, it's always retooling. It's always building itself up in various ways, and it's always collapsing in other ways. So what was built up in the post-war period, that's all collapsing and crumbling, and some of those facilities are still being used. And then the new facilities, most of them that I'm seeing are designed, a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them are seemingly being designed to, facilitate semi-autonomous and autonomous trucks. And in the short term, because Gen Z and millennials, are going to want to be on their screens, and they're going to want limited human interaction, especially with strangers, especially with bizarre truck drivers, right? It's stinky, even the ones that shower every day. I mean, it's still dirty and stinky on some level, a lot of them, just the diet alone. And I don't want to get too much into this because it's disgusting, and a lot of the audience is turned off by anything that sounds disgusting, but a big part of how a person smells is their diet. And people can have an opinion of me not showering very often all they want. I don't fucking stink. And a lot of it is I eat real actual food all of the time. And it's not, oh, he thinks he's better than us. No, I've used to eat garbage and I fucking stank a bunch of the time. I remember. Not always, but it certainly made it much more likely that I would smell bad if I ate trash. It's fairly obvious, right? And some of us, even when we stink, we still kind of smell good. Some of that's genetic also. And it is what it is. I wear my t-shirt like 4 days in a row, and I just smell it every day. And when I can finally, it kind of smells, I change it. takes 3 to 4 days. Now, if I really get into the stress hormones, I can sweat through that motherfucker immediately. And see, some of that also is people are so stressed out. They're under so much pressure, right? And that's one thing about unlocking this achievement of true knowledge of self. I'm still prone to that, but I'm way less prone to it. So when I first started this job and I was getting used to truck driving again, I was enough of those stress hormones were kicking in that I was a little more smelly than normal. But then now that I more or less know what I'm doing and I'm not waking up freaked the fuck out, it's a lot less. And I don't sleep I finally figured out not to sleep in my shirt if I'm going to wear it the next day. Probably don't do that, but hang on. I think my exit's coming up. Yeah, 20A. And, this idea of even showering once every 24 hours at a minimum, that's all for products. That's all. We was all brainwashed to do that. That's historically, if you want to talk about traditions in America, taking a shower at least once every 24 hours and applying products, that's not tradition. It's just not. Yeah, sure. Work hard, get dirty, take a bath, right? Bar of soap. We're talking like actual old school soap, not with a bunch of chemical bullshit in it, right? Lard based soap or whatever. Did I miss my exit? Sometimes this gets confusing out here. Oh, here we go. Here it is. So I think what happened last night was I rested, but I didn't really get a lot of REM sleep. I think it's probably what happened. Just jangled the old nerves. And who knows energetically, and what programs are being run. I can tell just if I forget to put my phone in airplane mode, I can tell the difference when I wake up the next morning. It's like, oh, my fucking phone was doing something to me. I don't know what it's doing something. Even if it's just watching me in real time and reporting or whatever it's doing. Getting whatever information it can get. Biometrically. Say, what do you mean? That's a conspiracy. It's like, I don't know. Doesn't your iPhone give you a sleep score or whatever? I don't use any of this stuff. I hear about it. You got to have a Fitbit for that? I don't know. I don't know what folks do. Sleep closet. There's the Ameristar in St. Louis. When I first started learning how to play pot limit Omaha, that was one of the few places that had a pot limit Omaha a couple of times a week. But I never got to go there, or I never went there, I should say. Now I've got money to play poker. I've pretty much lost the desire. I probably will at some point, but some of it is the hours I keep. It flips. With poker. Bass Pro Shops. I remember when that used to be a big deal. The Bass Pro Shop. So anyway, we'll see what the company does when they show up to work in a couple of hours. And who knows? Maybe don't know that it'll be any advantage whatsoever to pick up a load. I guess if I can get this load delivered today, they might be able to find me another partial load. I think that's probably what they're going to try to do. I got to go to Walmart yesterday, so I guess that was just after the live stream. Wally World. Got stocked up. I've been listening to some stories of people going out into Death Valley and thinking they're going to just take a day trip or whatever. And a lot of them, they follow their GPS, but that's not even really the main error they make. Is none of them brings anything approaching enough water. It's like, if I was going to drive out into Death Valley in a car in the summer, like what's the minimum amount of, well, let's say it's me and one other person. What's the minimum amount of water I'm carrying in the vehicle? Like, I don't know. I've got 15 spare gallons of water on board in this big rig, and that's in addition to my normal water supply. That's just extra. 15 gallons, because in a survival situation, 15 gallons of water is nothing. It's nothing. It's enough to survive long enough to get rescued effectively, or to figure out how to rescue oneself. In one case, the woman's son died of heat stroke, and he most likely would have survived if she would have brought anything approximating a reasonable amount of water, which I'd say probably be, I mean, really, I don't know what kind of vehicle she had. I think it was just a car, or maybe a crossover or whatever. But I'm talking like basically the rear storage area full of water, more or less. In my world, anyway. Crazy. And then some of it, when it's younger people, and sometimes it's women. Actually, a lot of times it's women who get into hiking or mountaineering or whatever, and then they just like go off in the woods and perish. Is that sort of a way to take themselves out without it looking like they took themselves out, to their family or whatever? This one lady was like hiking all of these peaks in New Hampshire, and they're not crazy tall or anything, but one of them she decided to go do like over the holidays, and she ended up like on a ridge line, and it's with the wind chill, it's like -30 and 90-mile-an-hour winds and like blinding snow, like deep snow. It's like, well, wait a minute. And she didn't even like dress appropriately. She just had like, she was basically dressed for how somebody would dress to go around town, down at the fucking whatever the nearby town was, like light jacket, stretch pants, fucking hiking shoes, regular socks. Like, what is this, man? Probably had a knit hat or whatever. Is this even real? No, just a minimum of food, a minimum of water. And again, it's a day hike. Yeah, I get it. It's a day hike where it could conceivably, the winds could get up to 90 miles an hour. There could be blinding snow and -30 wind chill. So yeah, if you want to call that a day hike, that's fine. That's that's basically, if anybody ever saw The Hateful Eight, that Tarantino movie, when they had to tie themselves off to go to the outhouse, and they like would almost die potentially trying to go to the outhouse and back to the main house. Like, that's pretty much what we're talking here. Like, what? And why do people continue on? Why do they? It just doesn't make any sense. What is going on here? And then a lot of people just psychologically, once they embark on something, and they're the type who won't just quit, because most people will just quit. Like, if they're like, oh, we're going to hike the Appalachian Trail, and then they hike fucking 5 miles and like, fuck this, and they quit, Then you have people who just won't give up and push through and push through and push through. So the types who will push through, a lot of times, like, why can't they recognize hey, it's time to turn back? I would have, as soon as I started getting hit with the high winds, I would have been like, well, clearly I didn't prepare for fucking gale force winds, so I'm going back where I came from. I'm not equipped for this. Oh, and look, the snow's getting deeper. All right, well, I'm not outfitted for, where are my fucking snowshoes? If I didn't think or know to bring snowshoes, and now it's a snowshoe situation, why am I continuing on? What is this? Oh, I paid for the StreamYard finally, 1 month, $45, which is kind of interesting from a monetary perspective, because some people would say, well, you could have got a whole year for $221. What are you doing paying $45 for 30 days? And I understand that. However, I would have to pay $45 5 times. So I would need to pay 4 more times of my own volition to unlock the free 7 months effectively is what it would end up being from a monetary standpoint. 5 months would be $220, I think. 45 times 2 is 9. Double that is 180. That's 4 months, and then add 45 to that. It's about 225. So there you go. It's 5 months. But I don't save anything if I'm not going to use it. What if I only pay for it one time and then I don't pay for it again? I actually saved $180 in that case. Because it would be a disaster to pay $221 and then not use it. Or to only use it the equivalent of what, 6 months? What if I got 6 months of use out of it? Well, it's like, okay, then it's not a disaster to pay 6 individual months. Then I'm only really saving $45. And a lot of people can't do that math either. So it just the financial incentive, even though it sounds cheaper. And how many times have I been in a store and somebody gets up there with one drink and immediately is like, it's cheaper if you buy 2. And I'm like, no, it's not. And they're like, huh? And I'm like, how much is 1? And then I'm like, how much is 2? I said, that's more. Yeah, but it's cheaper if you buy 2. How can it be cheaper if it's more money? Oh, you mean it's less per unit? Well, if I'm only ever going to drink 1, why would I pay more for 2 if I'm only going to drink 1? That doesn't make any sense. And I used to collect recycling. Do you know how many times I find these drinks and they've had 1 or 2 sips taken out of them and then thrown in the garbage? It's because they got up to a counter and somebody said it's cheaper if you buy 2. It's like, yeah, but not if I'm only going to drink 1. It's not. If I'm going to drink 1 and then take 2 sips of the other one and throw it in the trash, that's more expensive. And now Benton's standing there pouring it out and getting fucking, sticky soda all over his shoes, trying to pour out the soda. Like, no, it's not cheaper if you buy 2. It's not cheaper if I buy a whole year. It's cheaper if I'm going to 100% pay for a year by the month, and they give me half off if I buy the whole year. Then yes, it is cheaper, but only if I'm actually going to pay for a whole year. Then it's 50% off of what it would be if I paid by the month. So, like, what are we even talking about? As we know, the general public is no longer processing data and just can't do that math. Wow, we got a bozo slow truck fucking everything. Our straight truck slowing everything up. What a bozo. What is he even doing? You're a bozo. This is my thing is ultimately, and this is probably changing to some extent, but historically what I've said is, my only real hope for people or wish for individuals is that they would think for themselves. I mean, that's it. Think for yourself. And I figured out a long time ago, my worst idea for what I should do with my time, my energy, and my resources and my talents is always superior to anybody else's best idea for what I should do with those things. But then you get into the common sense, the word of mouthing, and the conventional wisdom. Oh, you should do this and you should do that. It's like, not if it's my idea, I shouldn't. Because my worst idea for what I should do or should not do is always superior to anybody else's best idea of what I should or should not do. Always. 100% of the time. That's just how that works. It's how it's supposed to work. And I see many, many people living their life, which is a breakfast cereal. Mikey likes it, within their own protracted experience of death, going from calamity to calamity based on, especially younger folks, misery, struggle, and strife by listening to society and its so-called conventional wisdom. Oh, well, do this, and then that doesn't work out. Oh, well, do that, and that doesn't work out. Hey, what about this? It's like, I'm starting to see a pattern emerge here at a certain point. Where word of mouth tells me to do a thing, I go and do it, and it's a catastrophe. And no matter how catastrophic it turns out, the mob or the peanut gallery always has a suggestion for what to do next. Whether that's, go into the trades. Oh, there's no good paying jobs. You can't sustain your family. Go into the trade. Yeah, I don't know if plumbing is so fucking easy. Why isn't everybody a plumber? Right. Meanwhile, society is a billboard on the interstate, and I'm driving this big rig, and I look over, and it's AAA roadside service, and it's an attractive 35-year-old white woman holding up a battery because your battery's died, you're stranded on the side of the highway, and she's gonna bring you a battery. An attractive blonde 35-year-old woman who looks 29 is gonna bring you a battery. And this is what I would do if I won the lottery. Let's do your Powerball fantasy. I would get in my car, pull over to the shoulder, and call AAA until an attractive blonde 35-year-old woman showed up to jump my car. And I'd make a documentary about it. And we would just laugh and laugh and laugh because it'd be, at a certain point, it'd be year 25 of once a week calling AAA to the roadside, and not one single motherfucking time was it a attractive blonde 32-year-old woman, fit, perfectly coiffured hair, perfect makeup. Yeah, I understand. There are. That's not something that's just. It's not zero, but it's effectively doesn't exist. Now, is it possible to get an objectively attractive 42-year-old man who's fit? Yeah, absolutely. But we're not putting him on the billboard. Right. But yeah, how many eventually it's going to be a conventionally handsome 42-year-old fit white man will show up and jump your car. The blonde woman, it's effectively zero. Yeah, hypothetically, sure. Very low chance statistically. Maybe the same odds as winning the Powerball in the first place, perhaps. And then I'm looking at it like, I only weigh about 150 pounds now, and I'm not as strong as I used to be, and I'm a grown ass man, and I don't think I could just stand there holding a full weight car battery that confidently with that body language. How's this blonde woman holding it up to her chest with one hand? Like, what is this? Now, when I was lifting weights and weighed 180 pounds, sure, or 190 pounds or whatever I weighed at a certain point, sure. But this is crazy. And people see that, and do they think to themselves, well, look at that. Look at that lie. That billboard's lying to us. Right? People look at it and they just feel whatever they feel and they move on with their lives. Because they're not thinking for themselves. They're not processing the data of why is a 32-year-old, damn near 8 out of 10 blonde woman on the billboard. And somebody will, because humans can only really, best case scenario, entertain one idea at a time. They'll go, well, sex sells or whatever. They want you to order their product. Like, yeah, I get that, but what does that have to do with the fact that that's never who's coming to the roadside ever? So I understand what they're trying to do with it. I'm saying that's still not a justification. I mean, put her in a bikini then. I mean, why not? She could be the woman who's trying to sell Bud Light then. Or Bud Light might not be the best example, but you know what I mean. Or put the ring girl, one of the ring girls from the UFC up there then. Right? Because this is a woman in a, it's winter time and she's in a, a yellow reflected hooded jacket. And she's wearing a beanie. Because it's wintertime. See what I'm saying? Like, it makes sense on some level. If we're just going full sex sales, okay, well, get one of the ring girls from the UFC or boxing to do it. The absurdity, right? The absurdity. And then Benton starts to fantasize about, if I order AAA 1,000 times, will she come even once? Now I've seen went to the car wash in Bakersfield, California, and a pretty attractive younger woman was working there. And, of course, that's when you start seeing attractive blonde women and blonde white women in a lot of these, entry level, low level customer service roles. That's a bad sign for just society in general, I would say. But she ain't supposed to be working at the car wash. There she was. Probably not even her main job. Oh, richest country on earth, greatest country of all time. Yeah, sure it's not. Oh, well, maybe she could find a man then. Now people will blame feminism. Maybe she could find a man, and when he can't pay the bills, they'll just say, oh, well, he could go become a plumber. It's like, okay, yeah, I guess if plumbing was just such a wonderful, great, rewarding job, I guess everybody would do it. It's like same thing with truck driving. I wouldn't recommend this to anybody. It's like, I make decent money, comparatively decent. It's like, yeah, good luck tolerating these conditions in the long run. Good luck with that. And just being away from one's family is a fucking non-starter for most people. And the American people, there's simply no end to what the American people will tolerate. And again, that brings us back to the gaslighting. That these people will put up with anything. And they'll just go, oh, well, and then come up with the next suggestion. There's an endless series of suggestions for things to try, right? Whereas, I know what I would have done years ago if I actually gave a fuck and, if I had a brain back then that could think about business, I just would have started a pawn shop. I would have went into the pawn business years ago. And, Been a pawnbroker. Not that I would have wanted to. It's like that's a way I could have made a whole lot of fucking money. I know that. Bet your ass. Took me years to figure out. Finally, some bozo would try to borrow money from me, and I'd say, "What do you think pawn shops are for? Better take your ass to the pawn shop. Because if you're gonna pay me back, you might as well pawn some of your items. Pay them back. They're gonna charge you a vig, but how bad do you need that money?" How many of these people doing Klarna and pay over time? How many of them haven't figured out the pawn shop? And yeah, I understand the interest can be exorbitant. So is all that Klarna bullshit. If you're going to pay fucking hefty fees, then to me, the pawn shop makes a lot more sense. Yeah, Bud Light, not the best example. That's right. Well, and what people fail to realize about that whole Bud Light thing is they want to say, oh, as if Anheuser-Busch, they didn't lose anything financially, I promise you. InBev, I believe, is the parent company, and I think they're German. So how many people even know that Anheuser-Busch is no longer American? But I promise you, InBev didn't lose anything on all that. I forget the name of the tranny. See, I think that was a psyop because I don't think the problem was hiring a tranny. I think it was that if you look at that particular tranny, that's a person completely devoid of talent and has a popular podcast somehow. And I don't know, I think maybe it could have been Who Are These Podcasts covered. Is it Dylan Mulvaney? Covered some of Dylan Mulvaney's podcast episodes, and it was just like, oh, this is a stupid person with no talent. Okay, well, I understand why it didn't work out. I don't think the trans is even really the problem. It's the who they hired. RuPaul, of 20 years ago, if the political climate would have allowed RuPaul to be a spokesman for a major brand, I promise you it would have went just fine. Everything would have went just fine. Nobody would have gave a fuck. Just like in 1987 or whatever, Boy George and Culture Club. Do you think any redneck in Arkansas gave a flying fuck about Boy George and Culture Club? They either completely ignored it or they liked the songs. That was it. There was no, oh, we're angry and this is a political thing. It simply didn't exist. It's like, okay. Pretty much everybody liked some of those songs. It's Boy George and whatever. It pretends like it likes women, so that's good enough for us. What do we care? almost like a don't ask, don't tell type of thing. They're not thinking about those things. RuPaul had a daytime talk show, right? So clearly it's not America is rejecting these concepts. It's something very different. But back to InBev not losing any money. What happened was Bud Light was the number one light. It was the number one beer in America, and Modelo is now the number one beer in America, and that was probably going to happen whether they hired a tranny or not. Meanwhile, why was for 15 years before this, why has Anheuser-Busch been rolling out a steady stream of new products under the Bud Light brand? Bud Light Platinum, Bud Light fucking Seltzer, Bud Light this, Bud Light Budweiser energy drink at a certain point. Like, they've tried everything. And there's a lot of products. So I bet you they made more money because a lot of their core audience who's like, well, fuck this, we're not buying Bud Light. They probably went and bought another Anheuser-Busch product that had a bigger margin on it. Because, yeah, some of them said, fuck this, give me Miller Lite. And some of them said, oh, now I remember I don't like Miller Lite. There's a reason why they drink Bud Light in the first place. But the Dumbo just wants to go, oh, look, this fucking hundreds of billions of dollars multinational conglomerate, just somebody pulled the wrong lever somewhere, and the next thing you know, they hired just the worst trans person possible, and now they've ruined the brand forever. Like, no, that ain't possible. Sorry. It all came out in the wash, or they made more money. That's the only two things that could happen. It's like the banking system. Oh, yeah, all the big banks went out of business, and they, turned their businesses into casinos, and they all gambled on, credit default swaps and mortgage-backed securities and collateralized debt obligations. But somehow the system knew that at the end of the day, if it all went south, that the taxpayer would bail them out. And then the taxpayer bailed them out, and then surprise, surprise, all-time record profits for the big banks. So was that a financial disaster or not? Like, for them, it worked out great and continues to work out great. And will continue to work out great. Because the function of the economy is to make rich people richer every new moment into perpetuity, and it never fails to achieve its purpose. And now it's raining, and I'm remembering that there's a never-ending series of construction zones, 55 miles an hour. So, yeah, see, this is not even feasible to try to drive this in 5 hours flat to make a delivery. But see, here's another thing I never know. Does it have to be 8 a.m.? I don't know. If it has to be 8 a.m., then there wasn't time for a 34. It has to be 8 a.m. tomorrow. Not under these conditions. And hell, it could be snowing tomorrow, for all I know. Anyway, I might just slow roll the whole way there. The way these folks are driving. At least till daylight hits. And so thinking for oneself and processing data, to be able to consider multiple ideas and to hear everybody laughing and mocking Bud Light and then say, well, okay, let's actually examine what's going on here from a business perspective. And Can we see that Modelo was probably going to, most likely going to overtake Bud Light anyway? InBev and Anheuser-Busch knew it. And for maximum profitability, what they're going to want to do is manage that process to move their customers off of Bud Light, which has a low profit margin, onto other Anheuser-Busch products that have higher profit margin. Makes sense to me. And meanwhile, they know some of the people who swear off Bud Light are going to go right back to it after a few months, which is exactly what happened. Like a lot of motherfuckers. Always gave me a headache. I never understood the Bud Light thing. Just like there's nothing wrong with Bud Heavy. Just give me a Budweiser. If we're going that route. I mean, there's worse beers. Yeah, PSYOP. Yeah, there you go. Well, I'm glad Bulk. I know I sound sarcastic, but I mean, yeah, Bulk Hungry agrees because it just makes good sense. Because, like it or not, RuPaul is an actual intelligent, talented person, right? Now, certainly demonically oppressed. That drag show was straight up in your face demonic. But I used to watch RuPaul on the talk show. It's fine. I mean, I like talk shows, so I watched Donahue, fucking Oprah. I watched all that shit. Even that one bozo, forget his name, the one who ended up eventually drew a swastika on his face or whatever. Forget his name. I didn't like him as much, but I still watched it time to time. Oh, Montel, yeah. Used to watch Montel. Ex-wife number 2 liked Montel. A lot of women like Donahue. A lot of women dug them some Donahue. Of course, he lost his job because he wouldn't go along with supporting the Iraq War. If anybody remembers that. He was horrified at how many of the so-called liberals went right along with the war back then. It's like, what are you talking about? Can't support this. Same thing with Jesse Ventura. Yeah, most probably never stopped drinking it. Exactly. Just made sure they weren't seen buying it or having a party with it for a few months. And who cares? I would be like, well, this is what I drink, so I don't know what to tell you, buddy. I mean, yeah, they hired a tranny. I'm still drinking fucking Bud Light. But then why are they drinking Bud Light? Well, probably a lot of it's social pressure because it's just not good. And I mean, even for what it is, it's just not good. I've never in my life drank a 30 pack of, and I don't mean in one sitting, but I've never in my life bought a case or a 30 pack of Bud Light, not one time. But I've bought cases or 30 packs of Budweiser here and there, especially if they're, it's a deal or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's fine. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, to get into some of the Nick Reiner stuff, apparently he was on this a podcast called Dopey. And if anybody knows who Hamilton Morris is, he's a guy on YouTube. He's the son of a famous documentary filmmaker. I think Errol Morris is the guy's name. Who's not exactly a household. He's famous within the world of film. To even be known to be known for making documentaries, years and years ago, it's a big fucking deal. But either way, he's talks about psychedelics and the chemistry of various drugs, psychedelic drugs, other kinds of drugs, but particularly psychedelics and related topics. He had a Vice show that was pretty popular, before Vice completely went to shit. And I would argue they never completely went to shit, but certainly they, there was a peak of content and it fell off, certainly. And so he put out I don't know if it's an official podcast episode, but it hit my feed this morning where he's talking to the guy from Dopey, which is apparently all about addiction and recovery. And it's a Jewish guy. And of course, Rob Reiner and Nick, I'm presuming, are Jews. And, I'm not involved in that world as far as, I guess I know the major beats and the broad strokes, but I've never been particularly interested in any of that. Just never. It's kind of it's neither here nor there for me. And I famously said, where I grew up, we didn't know we just didn't know what that was. We knew Judaism was a religion. That's about it. Nobody really knew anything beyond that. And maybe some of the stereotypes we were familiar with from movies and TV, possibly. I think it was mostly just confusing to a southerner from Arkansas. And just, again, it's neither here nor there. It's like, all right, well, it's America. You got religious freedom. Moving on. The whole World War II stuff. And, a lot of this stuff about Nick Reiner has centered around this movie he made with his father, and then the press tour to promote it. And people can make fun of Rob Reiner all they want. I mean, if you have an idea that America is work hard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and it's a meritocracy. Rob Reiner was a bad motherfucker in his field. Whether people want to recognize it or not, it's fine. But, you know, he was near the top of his field. It's just, it is what it is, folks. He was very accomplished, regardless of somebody's opinion of those accomplishments. Same thing with Bill Maher. Yeah, I understand. Bill Maher annoys the fuck out of me much of the time, honestly. He accomplished a lot in his career. If we're going to pretend like America is opportunity, work hard, bootstrap, you know, if we're going to pretend like that all exists, then you can't just say, oh, but that doesn't apply to Rob Reiner or Bill Maher. It's like, yeah, of course it does. What are you talking about? Or even Michael Moore. You know, did your average person have any fucking idea how Michael Moore made his bones? He made a movie in the 80s called Roger and Me. He got famous by making a documentary in the 80s, which was basically impossible. And yeah, I'm sure there were psyop elements in this. I'm certain of that. What isn't? What doesn't have psyop elements? You know, pretty much everything as far as I can tell. And Michael Moore was one of the early people to really shine a light on corporations and how harmful they are to their workers. And, you know, it gets into some of the union dynamics and workers' rights. And yeah, it starts to sound communist at a certain point, and I don't remember the documentary, and I would have seen it back then, but I wouldn't have understood it whatsoever. But I'm pretty sure I watched it at some point. I've always liked documentaries, but, you know, yeah, I don't like Michael Moore either, but, you know, dude accomplished a lot in his career. Why can't we recognize that? I don't get it. If you're trying to make a movie, writer, producer, director, you know, if you need somebody to wear those hats, you could do a lot worse than Rob Reiner. That's just what it is. Not my cup of tea overall, but he made some really good movies, certainly. That When Harry Met Sally was a cultural phenomenon, a minor cultural phenomenon. You know, that iconic scene that I never really liked that one scene, the fake orgasm in a public setting, but you know, it was a iconic scene to this day. Of course, Stand By Me, you know, was a big deal culturally. But so back to Nick Reiner on this podcast, and you know, Hamilton Morris talking, and I don't know the guy's name from the Dopey podcast, which I hate that name, but they played some of the audio from some of his interviews with Nick for the podcast, and over a number of episodes, Nick had a lot of involvement in that podcast. And so the Jewish guy who runs the podcast, that I don't know his name, just in him talking about Nick and him they played some of the audio and responded to it, like he's obviously seeking to exploit Nick. And you can tell Nick is pretty well aware of it. And so now this is not a justification for drug use. What I'm saying is, you know, a person born into that world and a person who's then spiritually attacked for whatever reason and born into a bloodline that it's just simply not possible to access those levels of wealth and fame without serving evil directly and knowing that they're serving evil directly. Right. So And the people who unironically think this is horrible and Rob Reiner was a great person and all of this, there are a lot of those people. Rob Reiner knew he was serving evil. It's no possibility that he was unaware of what he was serving. It's not possible. So he's in a world where, even when he makes a film with his son and goes to do press, they're going to be more interested in talking to him than talking to his son. Now, some of this, though, I would say is Nick's own fault. If Nick had a little more strong personality, if Nick, if a son has a badass, strong personality, well-regarded father, well, that doesn't preclude him from being just as much of a badass and just as much of a strong personality, right? I mean, you think Charlie ever took a backseat to his dad? I doubt it. He just don't have the personality for it. It's just not how Charlie rolls, Maybe Emilio did to some extent, but not Charlie. And there's ways to do that respectfully, and so when we look at all of the psychological aspects of this idea of having all these family friends and then people seeking influence because of who Nick was, who his father was, even arguably, you can even argue that the podcast itself is exploitative. It's funny how those dynamics aren't necessarily accounted for fully. That's interesting. And then the Jewish guy is telling stories. And so some of the audio he played, the Jewish guy is really like he's busting Nick's chops because he sent Nick like a box full of merch to give to his dad, Rob Reiner, in hopes that Rob Reiner would wear the branding. Like this guy was trying to come up with some branding, right? This shameless, Jewish business person. And he's, of course, in that world, he's going to seek to leverage any networking opportunity and say it's in the context of a world of death and game of lies. And again, vacuous, delusory adversarial realm of business transactions. And what if Nick is like, hey, I'm trying to have some friends out here and have a real experience, and everybody I interact with, outside of the context of partying and doing drugs is just trying to exploit and extract things out of me. It was very uncomfortable to listen to this audio because, the Jewish guy is very pushy and just doing everything in his power to more or less directly order Nick to like give these hats to his dad. And Nick is just straight up like, hey man, I'm not giving those hats to my dad. And, the guy keeps the podcaster is persistent, and, he's older, he's an older guy than Nick. Whereas Benton, and this is some of what we run into with the company, I'll just be like, hey man, didn't you hear me say no? Yeah, I heard. Knock it off. I said I'm not going to give those hats to my dad. I don't want to hear about it. Like, let's not talk. I'm done. Right. And that is my personality. And some could say, oh, well, that's a jerk or that's this or that. It's like, okay, that's your opinion. I have less respect for somebody who will just go along with it. And so now you've got Nick expected to tell a bunch of lies just to get out of the conversation. And, again, it becomes very dirty and disgusting and unseemly, right? And how much of Nick's daily life was that? And then how much of that did he probably rightly or wrongly blame his dad for? And remember, his grandfather was also famous in entertainment, Carl Reiner. So this is actually Rob overcame the potential pitfalls of having a famous, accomplished father. So now you get into the third generation, and it's like, especially if Nick thinks he's going to be a screenwriter or whatever, it's like, yeah, good luck with that. But then, and I know a lot of people hate when I talk sports, but you know, my grandfather was also at Southwest Conference in basketball at Arkansas, and they won the conference championship. And my father started and played high school basketball, and then I didn't play high school basketball partially because I wasn't allowed, and really my attitude was too poor anyway. It wouldn't have worked out, but I was better at basketball than my dad. It wasn't, and of course, basketball wasn't my grandfather's primary sport anyway, my famous grandfather, but I never suffered from this idea that I couldn't outdo my father. My father believed it was impossible for him to do better than his dad. It just simply couldn't happen. He had this mythology around his father. It's like, well, I don't have the personality to do that. I don't, my brain can't do that. Like, okay. Whatever. And it probably, you know, totally destroyed my dad's twin brothers, who absolutely 100% would have played in the NBA if they had their heads screwed on right. And, you know, weren't insane on some level. Couldn't even go to college because their own insanity precluded them from going to college. You know, how about that? Were scheduled to go to Ole Miss on basketball scholarships, and enough stuff happened before they could get there where Ole Miss was like, you know what? Actually, y'all ain't coming. So, anyway, best of luck with the rest of your lives. Meanwhile, they're probably the two best basketball prospects Ole Miss had, you know, maybe ever. I don't know. Certainly within that time frame. And then they didn't do anything in sports. Where's my water? Rinse my mouth out here. I know it's here, but I can't find it. Oh, there it is. And none of this is to excuse what Nick did, Nick Reiner, but, and then also, again, born into a bloodline where certainly some measure of satanic ritual abuse would have been involved, you know, whatever type of rituals these people get up to, you know, I don't know what they got going on. Yeah, oh, that's funny. Yeah, I don't want to get into that specifically, the TVE stuff, but you ain't wrong, Paul Hungry. You ain't wrong. Truck parking 2 miles. I wonder if I can actually pull in there and use the bathroom real quick without getting trapped. Yeah, we'll try. We'll give it a shot. And then back to the exploitation, the shameless exploitation. And it got so bad that the podcaster said, yeah, Nick stopped talking to me after I asked if he could get his dad to come on the podcast. He said, yeah, I probably texted him, 200 times after that. He never replied, and, that's going to be that was that guy's whole life to some extent, trying to, and, again, clearly had his own issues. Mental health was probably a big part, being born, and some people, they can't really, some people do need to be protected from themselves, and born into a Hollywood culture where it's like a hobby, or a sport to go do drugs and party, and there's been speculation that some of the fight, him acting bizarre at this party, Nick, and this fight with his family, some of that would have been maybe they were like, hey, okay, if you think you're going to keep living with us, and in some way it's a 32 or 35-year-old man, however old he was, continuing to live like a child, which is like, hey, like, he bears responsibility for why is he letting his parents dictate his own life at a certain point. Yeah, this ain't gonna work. The truck in front of me pulled in, and we're not even gonna, this ain't even gonna be doable. We're just gonna end up driving right back out. There ain't gonna be nowhere to stop. You got to keep going, buddy. There's one behind me too. Oh, he's stopping because the road is destroyed. Never mind. All right, I take back the horn honk. Take it back, sir. I'm going down this road. See if we get lucky. Yeah, there's a spot. We got lucky. Got lucky. All right. One moment. Be right back. And so when you get back to the Hollywood scene and entertainment, and like Dick Gregory said, the filthiest people on the planet are athletes and entertainers. And he was an entertainer, lest we forget. And in fact, the first successful black stand-up comedian, lest we forget, the absolute first, outside of just doing comedy strictly for black people anyway. And part of that was his personality was he didn't take any shit. Didn't matter who it was. He just tell them how it was to their face, and whatever they did to him was whatever they did to him. But that's his personality. Myself, I've always just kind of done whatever the fuck I wanted on some level my whole life. It's just how I am. That's just what I'm gonna do. People don't like it, fuck them. And whatever Nick had going on, some people don't have a personality like that. Some people, they can't really go their own way. It just they don't have what it takes. And, and when you get into the parents and the narcissism, their only concern is how does the son reflect on them, and how does their own behavior towards him reflect on them. So they're not really ever going to demand that he do anything hard, and they're just going to say, we just want you to be happy and fulfilled. We'll support you in anything you want to do. It's like, how does any of that help a kid who might just need somebody to put their foot in his ass and say, hey man, you're going, I don't know what you're doing. You're picking something and you're doing it and you're sticking to it. And if you abandon that, probably will give you a second chance. And then if that doesn't work out, you're on your own, buddy. I don't know what to tell you. And that's the best way we can love and support you. So off you go. Right. Because you can't hang out here. And we still love you. We still like to see you. And, if you want to stay in the guest house over the holidays or whatever, that's fine. But if you're making your own money, you're probably going to stay in a hotel anyway, right? Because at a certain point, when I visited my family or whatever, I might stay with them. But then at a certain point, I was a grown-ass man and had my own money. It was like, why wouldn't I just stay in a hotel? And then coming from this old-timey culture in Arkansas, and some of it is like a Depression era mindset, where like my mom will go visit her mom, and my grandmother, who I visited not too long ago, and my mom's brother takes care of my grandmother, my mom's mom, and they live on the same property. My grandmother has her own like small house, what would now be called a tiny home, damn near. And so my grandmother has dementia, and it caused them. My mom even sleeping over there caused a bunch of problems. And then, so the next day, her brother's like, "Yeah, I knew that wasn't going to work out. All this, because he knows her the best, because he's there with her every day." And then my mom is kind of like, they never invite me to come over. They could have me sleep at their house, and I think she finally mentioned it to him, and he's like, made some excuse like, well, we got a couch or whatever. And he's like, oh, I can sleep on the couch. And I just told her, I said, listen, they don't want you in their house. I said, the days of people wanting other people to come stay in their home, I said, that shit's over. And she's like, yeah, you're right. So, yeah, nobody wants people coming and staying at their house. It's just nobody. Now, yeah, some weirdos do, and some people just don't care, right? Some people just doesn't matter. And some people will still act offended if you try to, that was a thing historically. And you'll see it in movies sometimes where, somebody's visiting from out of town and they choose to stay in a hotel. And, half of the interaction is all about how, we wish you'd stay here and not in a hotel. It's just better for everybody. That's what I told her. It's like, you could probably stay in a hotel. And then I know the money's a problem. It's like, fuck, I'll probably just pay for it. Go stay in a hotel. Just go stay in a fucking hotel. What is this? What are we doing to ourselves, folks? And, I see a lot of that in the Nick Reiner story of just people in the context of family and social group dynamics sort of performatively putting themselves through a bunch of exploitative fucking theatrics just to no purpose. It's like, go to the hotel, right? Hey, man, we don't care what you do. Pick something and do it. And if that doesn't work out, we'll happily support you in whatever you do next. And if that doesn't work out, I don't know. I guess you're on your own at that point. And, you've got a trust fund, by the way. It's not, see, that's another thing. He has a guaranteed monthly income, this kid. He's got probably 10 G's a month, minimum, and an inheritance. He's probably got money that kicks in at various points in his life, right? So I don't know that he had access to buy his own home at an early age without working a job, but dude could rent his own apartment at all stages of his adult life without working. Now, some of that is it's a family of artists, right? His mom's an artist, his dad's an artist, his grandfather made a living as an artist. You could say, oh, well, that's not an artist, he was an actor. Well, it's considered the arts. So part of that is if you want to go into the arts, you have enough money to not have to work at Starbucks or whatever while you pursue whatever you want to do. So if he wanted to, and I've met a lot of these people on the West Coast who have a minimum amount of money they get every month, and they figure out, they know themselves at an early enough age to know they're not ambitious, they don't give a fuck, they don't mind living off the 10 grand a month or whatever it is. They know at some point they're going to get enough inheritance to retire on a piece of property or whatever. And, they still get to socially exist within the world they were born into if they want to. Some of them don't. And they just go pursue their passions. And that's where you get your van life type of people. A lot of these content creators, especially the ones who are young and attractive, those are almost all trust fund kids. Almost all of them. Not all, but almost all. And if they want to go, if they want to grow dreadlocks, wear bell bottoms, and be bohemians and go drive around in a converted school bus all around Northern California, Oregon, and Washington, and, hang out at the Grateful Dead or the Fish concert parking lot or whatever, that's what they go do. And their family doesn't give a fuck. It's just what it is. And, maybe at the age of 35, they say, okay, well, I want to, pursue my passion in photography, or, I want to write a play. They just write a play and put on a play. And if it succeeds, great. If not, well, that's whatever. And, for middle America, I never knew. I had no concepts of that. I had to leave where I'm from and go experience that to some extent, although not directly, but at least to be around those types of people enough to realize it. Occasionally I would run into somebody who was, hanging out with the travelers with a big backpack and, trying to dress like one of these train riders and, get drunk with the train riders and the dirty kids. And, it became clear at a certain point, their parents have money. Like these kids are not, these are not homeless, broke kids like most of the dirty kids. These are, or people who've been, in my case, grew up in some sort of abusive situation, whether abusive in the conventional sense or not, or again, some kind of weirdo, fundamentalist, religious type thing. Just whatever that is, you're historically homeless youth. A lot of them have gravitated to those type of subcultures. And for whatever reason, that didn't work for Nick. And probably some of that was some people are seemingly destined for drug abuse. Now, the thing was, given a choice, who's going to hang out such as when I got attacked walking down Alvarado to downtown Los Angeles. Who's going to hang out on the streets of downtown LA to abuse drugs if they have a certain amount of money every month, and if their parents own a $15 million mansion in the general area and has a guest house they can go stay in? See what I'm saying? He sort of, it prevents him from falling to a certain level to where he actually, because of his own choices, apparently he ended up having those homeless experiences. But he did it apparently in Texas, which I'm sure that was short-lived. And see, he's probably staying with people who they probably kicked his ass out, right? Because street-level homeless drug abuse means you go to jail in Texas. That's what that means. You're going to jail, buddy. He talks about in New Jersey and Maine, probably, staying with friends who are then like, hey, man, it's great to see you, but, we don't know what you got going on, but we love you, but you got to get the fuck out of here. And then the next thing you know, he's wandering the streets because he knows where to get pills or whatever. And he's on that podcast at a certain point talking about a relapse, which isn't even a relapse. He's talking about at a certain point he knew he just wanted to smoke weed and take some pills, right? It's like, guess what? There's a whole lot of people that smoke weed and take pills. There's a whole lot of people that smoke weed, take pills, and don't get addicted, depending on what the pills are. I mean, that's because moderation is not an industry, right? My ex-wife number 2 was one of those people. She was able to use substances and not be addicted to them. People will say, oh, yes, you're right. I don't know what to tell you. I know she dabbled from time to time when I was with her, and she, basically, number one, I don't get to tell people what to do. Number 2, as long as I don't find out, whatever. Number 3, I'm doing whatever I'm doing on some level, so whatever. But I wasn't going to be around it. Don't let me find out, because that's not the type of person but I don't care that she used to do drugs. Who gives a fuck? Now, if she was recovered and, went through addiction and moved on, that's fine too. But there's some people that just, he probably didn't need recovery. He probably didn't need any of these things. Now meth is obviously a big problem, and that's a one-way ticket straight to Satan and the demons. When you see my user text down there, power over the power, right? Well, Nick clearly didn't have power over that power. And I've known a lot of people who use meth, and I've observed a lot of street-level drug addicts, and I've listened to a lot of people talk about their methamphetamine experiences on YouTube. And there's almost nobody who talks about that drug without mentioning Satan, demons, and all of this. I mean, it seems to be one of the most effective ways to more or less directly experience pure, unmitigated evil. And I think on some level, just the sleep deprivation probably does that. So, and I vividly remember going into a bar in the daytime, a pool hall. It's the only time I've ever been there. Never went back. Didn't even know about it. But ex-wife number 2 and her best friend, they were from that area. So I was with both of them. Because before she met her boyfriend, they ended up getting married, I think. He was one of my best friends at the time. So we all hung out socially. And, I'm so good. I was so good with women. I got myself girlfriends and also got my buddies' girlfriends on some level. Of course, he was able to talk for himself and all that. I didn't really do anything other than introduce them. But I've introduced a lot of people. Multiple people got married mainly because I introduced them. Or they met through me. I've been a catalyst for many things in other people's lives. That's just what it is. And I don't get credit for that, but that's just normal. That's normal in Benton's world. But we went in this pool hall, and there was this some big dude playing pool by himself, and I could just feel the evil and the anger and the rage coming off of him. It was palpable, and I think we just like had a drink and left. I was like, let's get the fuck out of here. Because I could feel it was being directed at me, and I could feel it was probably because there he was with no woman, and here I am with two hotties. And it's a very male thing to be like, what's that guy got that I don't got? And the answer is two hotties. I mean, I don't know what else to say, buddy. And there's a lot of meth going on at the time, and I really got the impression that had something to do with it. It's definitely it's an underlying element of evil there, for sure. And I've never forgotten that, and I knew to get the fuck away from it as quickly as possible. But just pure hatred, just the hatred emanating from this individual. It took me. I was taken aback. And so a lot of the Nick stuff, I would say, the mental illness, the drug abuse, meth in particular, and the pressures of the family name and the family fame, and born into a world of socializing in Southern California with a lot of peers who, let's face it, whether they have talent or not, don't really do anything with the talent. And meanwhile, that's okay. Yeah, you hear about a Nick Reiner, but you don't really hear about all the other people born into similar situations who, just sort of live their lives, and some of them become successful because they have a desire to, be a doctor or a lawyer or a veterinarian or just whatever they want to do. And, they go off to a good school, that they're pampered and they're supported. And, again, if they're social drug users or social drinkers, that's normal and culturally accepted. Like, buddy, I slowed down to 45. Why aren't you merging? And of course, that's MAGA in a gigantic uh, Ford F-250. Not a dually, but now he's going to go maximum speed. Yeah, slow merge mean I got to put the flashers on and honk the fucking air horn before he can figure out how to get into the interstate. And that's your strong leader of men right there, folks. He's lily livered. He's lily livered. Famous story of my grandfather who did not serve in World War II, apparently being on an elevator with a Marine or somebody who said, when it was found out my grandfather didn't serve, he said, well, if you're in my unit, you'd be cannon fodder. And my grandfather said, if I was in your unit, I'd be running your unit, buddy. I'm like, yeah, that's my spirit also. It's like, what are you talking about? I'd be in charge, not you. What? Like, you can make fun of me all you want. I think the idea that a Southern man has to pull up to the store in a pickup truck is fucking ridiculous. They have to. They can't pull up in anything other than a pickup truck. That's ridiculous. Now, maybe, sure, their wife's SUV or whatever. On occasion, they're still going to, people are going to want to know what's up. I don't give a fuck if I'm seen in a Mickey Mouse car. Who cares? I've always liked small cars. And when I had my Eagle Talon, I could get in that bitch, rev it up to 5,500 RPMs, and fast slip the clutch and blast off down the drag strip too. Never miss a gear. So I don't know. What's the difference? Bat out of hell. Shot out of a cannon my whole life. What do I need to prove to the bozos at the country store? Fuck them. But meanwhile, what this has led to is Root and Toot and MAGA can't even merge onto the motherfucking interstate. Slowed down to nothing for him, and he still can't speed up enough to get in front of me. Like, what is this, man? Where are your balls? Why are your balls in your wife's purse, buddy? My wife starts tripping. I'm not coming home to that broad. I moved to an entirely different town while I was married. Yeah, and you know what? People talk about tradition. Traditionally, the woman would have moved with the man. It's like, what do you mean you moved to another town? Yeah, I moved to another town. She eventually moved to that town too. Surprise, surprise, I've never had any trouble merging onto the interstate or pulling up to the store in something other than a pickup truck. But yeah, they're rootin' tootin' tough guys. No, there's a bunch of pussies who do whatever they're told. I don't respect that. You have all the opinions you want of a Cal Berkeley professor. He'll put on Antifa garb and crack your skull with a lock on the end of a fucking chain. I don't know what to tell you. I respect that. That's I'm not in favor of that. I'm a pacifist, but if violence is the universal language, these bozos are pussycats, soft as paper. During the pandemic, I was walking up to them, talking shit to them to their face, and none of them ever did anything. I was just calling them pussies. Like, y'all a bunch of fucking pussies. Just going along with all this. What the fuck is wrong with you? Y'all ain't shit. Bunch of weaklings. Can't even stand up to your own women, much less the government or the medical system. It's a fucking joke. But, it's promoted as something. And that's what people fall for. They fall for the propaganda every time. So as long as they pull up in the pickup truck and, they get a certain sentiment in their heart when they listen to the country song, in their status quo social contract, and they're accepted within their peer groups. Meanwhile, they're all texting each other pornography all day, right? Just as wicked and depraved and morally repugnant as the so-called other side, right? The idea of two factions in America. And that's what nobody wants to face. You can't heal the nation until you face the fact that so-called conservatives are as morally repugnant and decadent and depraved as the lefties are. It's the same thing. It manifests differently. It's the same motherfucking thing. They're equally depraved. They're equally degenerate. Right? You want to practice Christianity? Well, at what point does the Christian grow and evolve and change to the level where they no longer fall victim to things like pornography or sexual thoughts? Well, I did it. And they say, oh, no, you didn't, Benton. The glory goes to God. No, it doesn't. What I am is the way. What I am is the truth. What I am is the light. No one comes unto true knowledge of self without going through Christ consciousness. Benton, the performer, in the context of the performance, gets credit for that. If anybody don't like it, fuck them. Christians go to a church that doesn't pay taxes, that tells them to pay their taxes. How about quit paying your taxes, and then when the government prosecutes you, we'll pass the collection plate to hire you a lawyer. How about that? I say, what are you talking about? I don't know. What did Jesus do? Did he work a job? Did he pay taxes? The government executed him for sedition, right? How you going to follow Christ within government and society and not commit sedition? I don't think it's possible to be a follower of Christ and not commit sedition from the perspective of the government. What is sedition? Let's find out. It's a crime on the books. I don't know that anybody ever gets charged with it these days. Well, I believe they still technically have the death penalty for treason. Sedition is organized incitement of rebellion or civil disorder against authority or the state, usually by speech or writing. Number 2, insurrection or rebellion. Now seditious means of, related to, or being involved in sedition. Okay. Synonyms: treasonous, subversive, insubordinate, rebellious. Now some would argue, well, we're not organizing an incitement against the civil authorities or the authority of the state. Now, it seems to me like the state itself would at some point consider the mere existence of Jesus Christ or Jesus of Nazareth to be representative of sedition. Even what, telling the rich man? The rich man says, what do I do? Basically, I want to follow you. He said, yes, sell everything, sell your possessions, turn them in, bring the money to this, give it to this movement, basically. Follow me, buddy. Meaning, I'll tell you what, I'll give you your marching orders. I'll lead you. I don't know. That sounds like sedition to me. You're telling the people who've become rich by serving the evil system to stop serving the system of evil, sell their possessions, give the money to the movement, and then follow me. It sounds like a rebellion. Yeah, money bless America. One nation under the love of money. Hang on, we need to plug in the old phone to charge here. Where did my power bank go? No, it's the dollar apparently has weakened to an all-time. It's apparently an all-time historically weak dollar right now. So, my paycheck continues to feed me, and I go to the super center and spend hundreds of dollars and get $100 in cash almost every time because there's no fee, right? And at some point, and again, I do kind of fit a profile where they might, and look, everybody fits a profile at this point, damn near. Someone who might try to, not scan some of their items or might try to just wander off and not actually pay. But they do tend to watch me maybe a little closer than others. But I am aware that people, and really what it is that people haven't yet adjusted to the economic situation. It's not that it's, oh my God, it's the economy and it's this and it's that, because I've heard several of these younger generations say all-time high inflation. No, it's not. No, it is not. In fact, not even close to the highest inflation of my lifetime. My lifetime. It's also not the worst job market of my lifetime. That would be 1983. 1980 was the peak of gas prices adjusted for inflation. And the Federal Reserve cranked the interest rates up to damn near 20% by 1977 to finally get the runaway inflation under control. And in fact, 1965 to 1983 is a period of time known by the Federal Reserve. They have an entire webpage about this called The Great Inflation. And nobody has a memory and nobody's going to Google it. When was the worst inflation of the last however many years? This is not the worst inflation of the post-war period. I hate to break it to you folks. In 1960 to now is pretty much, it's just the same environment within boom bust cycles, and it gets better, it gets worse, but it never really gets better actually. But yeah, it's a contraction, expansion, or expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. It's a never-ending phase. And now you see that the system is overtly managing the contraction phase, whereas in the past it was probably more covert. Now they're just straight up overtly managing it. And a lot of it is the layoffs. A lot of it is, you know, the fact is, if you have a job, your job, if they could pay you less, they would pay you less. Period. End of story. And if I could choose to accept less money and do less work and still live in the truck, I would happily do that. Surprise, surprise, that's not even possible. They could pay me less and I would still do the same job I'm doing now. I would have a cutoff where I just don't work past a certain time at night. And if the company can't figure out how to run me, that's not my problem. I would accept less money for that. But the economics of truck driving, it doesn't really, it's not set up to facilitate such. But believe me, if I work a normal, for me, 14-hour day, I make Illinois minimum wage if you factor in time and a half. I don't think that's a coincidence. How's somebody going to follow the teachings of Christ and chase money? Well, it's not possible. It's one or the other. Oh, well, we got to feed our families. Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's a justification for any and all ways of living and behaviors then, right? Because we got to feed our families. Now, what about all the other things the money pays for other than food? I didn't work a regular job for many years, and I ate. I figured out how to eat somehow. It's possible. And that's not a high bar to cross. If you're talking about giving your children a minimum amount of calories and nutrition, quote, social contract conformity to peer groups, you can't really just feed them at a bare subsistence level now, can you? Meanwhile, there's been economic phases in America where it's been exactly that. Some people, that's how they grow up, is at some bare subsistence level of nutrition. And have since, yeah, some of that was, prior to World War II. But I'd say not. I think it's just started 1960 and go to today. Like none of this, whatever's happening, none of this is new. There's new aspects like crypto or, whatever it may be, but there's some new novel phenomena here and there, but the technology changes and seemingly increases, but it's basically just all the same shit over and over and over, cyclically. Merge. It's not my job to. I'm not merging. I have the right of way. You're merging. This is where a lot of people don't understand driving. It's not a merge. I'm not merging. They're merging. I have the right of way. So what I do is hold my space, and then they merge. It's not they hang out and let me figure it out for them. It's a merge. What I mean is they're merging. I'm not merging. I already merged. That's how I got here. I merged hours ago, or whenever the last bathroom break was. Yeah, see, that's the thing is this would have been impossible to make this delivery tomorrow if I did a 34-hour restart. There's just no way I could have made it by 8 a.m. Impossible. 8:30, sure. This the thing is I never know how strict is the appointment. You know, why would the truck driver have access to that information? Well, it's because the realm, if the realm can gaslight, the realm will gaslight 100% of the time. It will never pass up a gaslighting opportunity. And then it will also gaslight because people will say, well, why can't you call them? Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? Like, because it's basically impossible to get that information. See, I'm going 48 with the flashers on. There's plenty of space. And I hit the air horn because those people were refusing to merge, and they pulled off onto the shoulder. I think they might have just stopped because they just don't know what to do. And see, these people, I hope y'all understand, they don't have what it takes to exist in a proper society at a minimum level. They would have to be re-educated and coached up. And I don't mean re-educated in a sense of communism, but when there's 5 car links in front of me, I'm going 48 as a big rig with the flashers on, and then I hit my air horn to let them know, here I am, there's your space, and they panic and pull onto the shoulder and stop. That person can't function in a proper society. They're so far below the minimum standard. They've never even learned how to drive a car, because when they got their license, somebody just said, instead of teaching them how to drive, they said, well, it's common sense. You just get on the road and do what everybody else does. You just go NPC normie like everybody else. It's like, okay, but if the person doesn't understand the concept behind how the interstate is designed, the next thing you know, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and I'm waiting for them to do what they're supposed to do, except they don't know what they're supposed to do. They simply don't understand what they're supposed to do. And I can't do anything about that part of life where they don't know what they're supposed to do. I can't do anything about it. I did everything in my power. I left them enough space. I put the flashers on so they would understand that I'm going slow. And then I honked the horn so they would know, here I am, and here's your signal to get in front of me. And they panicked and pulled onto the shoulder. What is that? And if I bring it up, I will only ever be blamed. Oh, well, it's something you did. No, it's not. If I had never been born, they would be exactly the same as they are. It has nothing to do with me. I can't stomp on the fuel pedal and accelerate up to 70 miles an hour to get in front of them. This vehicle doesn't do that. And even if it did, it's too long anyway. I can't do the impossible to overcome their ineptitude. And so part of the gaslighting of this realm is to get the individual to internalize notions around the idea that I should be able to perform the impossible to socially engineer these incompetent, inept, normie bozos to steer around their own ineptitude. That's insane. That's insanity. And no, I won't. If they can't figure out that I've left them space, I'm going slow as fuck, and all they got to do is barely speed up and get in front of me, I can't. There's nothing I can do. I can't do anything else about that. I did the absolute maximum I was able to do in that scenario. And it's not my fault that nobody taught them how to drive. Because I went to school and we had driver's education and I took it and they taught us how to drive. One of my teachers went around in a car owned by the school district that had its own set of brakes, had a gas pedal and a brake on his side. He could reach over and grab the steering wheel if he needed to, and we went driving. He taught me how to drive. And at some point, they taught me how to merge onto the freeway. I was 14 motherfucking years old. And then to romanticize that as if a return to 1989, which it won't fix anything. This is 1989. It's just things hadn't quite degenerated that far yet. Because to build up certain aspects of society, society had to function, especially when there was less technology. The human had to be able to stand in for the technology in the past because the technology wasn't there. See? So the human had to be capable on some level. Otherwise, everybody can't get to the factory to build up society. Everybody can't get to the job site to build the factory. See, certain things were just necessary in the past. Well, guess what? They're no longer necessary. Society really doesn't depend on, where does that person need to get to this morning and what's actually going to happen as a result. And meanwhile, that's their level of performance. What is this? Meanwhile, bear with me while I have some watermelon, if you don't mind. Don't mind if I do. People will just say, oh, well, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is if they're that incompetent in that part of their life, I promise you they're that incompetent in other areas of their life. And so part of what I went through with that Hispanic person who interrupted me while I was backing in at the shipper the other day before yesterday, is instead of him putting a bunch of effort into trying to get me to help him figure out how to do his job while I'm trying to do my job, which is what my company didn't hire me to go there and help him. They hired me to do what they want them to do. Well, if he would put the same amount of effort into learning how to read and write English, I would say if he wants to work in America as a truck driver to feed his family, that's probably what he should do. He should probably go to night school and learn motherfucking English. And that would be the best thing for him. Damn. I was going to put the Rain X on, and I forgot. I was going to do that last night. Still got a little bit left from before, but that makes a world of difference, that Rain X. I heard some car pass me. Can't maintain their speed. I keep slowing down and slowing down and slowing down. No matter how slow I go, I'm still catching up to them. I was going 68 when they passed me. Now I'm going 62 and I'm still catching them. Can't maintain their speed. This also ain't real physics in this place. It's like this car, I'm already going slow as fuck. I'm running right up their ass, and I'm gonna have to go 71, and I'm still like barely gonna even be able to pass them. In fact, if they'd had more space, I probably wouldn't have even been able to pass them. These slow trucks are slowing down a little bit. And I'm sick of people wanting to talk about politics. Get some power or shut the fuck up. Power is a prerequisite for engagement in the political process. If a person or a group doesn't have power, They cannot, by definition, be engaged in a political process. So for a common American to even discuss politics is insane. You have no power. None. Step one, get power. Because the government can't do anything unless money and power force it to do something. The government does what money and power force it to do, period. You can protest all you want. There's no power in that. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. And there's only one way for the American people to have power, and that's to stay the fuck home without being told to stay home. The people have already proven they'll stay home if they're told to stay home. They won't stay home for their own benefit. So they'll stay home to their own detriment, but they won't stay home for their own benefit. People want to talk about communist revolution as if that would be a bad thing. I'm not saying it would be a good thing. I'm saying that's not a failure of the people. If the people, if the government falls victim to a communist uprising, that's a failure of the government. How can you criticize the people when the government allows it to get to the type of conditions where people would want a communist overthrow? Now, certainly there's many elements of communism in America, and there has been for a long ass time. Again, going back to 1960. Marxism. Daylight. Damn, coming up on 3 hours. Wow, I sure can. Yeah. Goodness gracious. Yeah, make merging great again. That's right. These motherfuckers that merge with evil. The fucking demiurge or whatever. Yeah, man. Something's going on. Oh, all right. Well, I guess that's enough out of me. Thanks for watching. Bye.